Yo, what is going on, everybody? We are back with another special fucking guest, UFC Featherweight OG, Billy Quarantillo. How we feeling today, brother?
I'm doing great, man. Thank you so much for having me, and it's good to be here.
Bro, like I said before, I appreciate this shit more than you know, bro. Thank you so much, bro, for real, man. Before we were
My pleasure.
before we got started, bro, you were telling me a little bit about have you have your own gym now? I just want to get that thing a shout out real quick. You're wearing the hoodie. Go ahead and shout that thing out.
Yeah. This is my first interview in my new gym, Gracie Pack, which was owned by one of my friends for years. It's been open since 2012, and you slipped in on the timeline on Twitter, and you're like, "Hey, I want to do an interview," and I was like, "You know what? This is a good opportunity to finally do some interviews in my new office." Obviously you can tell it isn't. I got one like little drawing on the wall, which is like my black belt, and that's it right now. So I got to redesign the place a little bit, but this is a good first interview for me.
You got your black belt under Matt Arroyo?
Yes, I did. I got my black belt under Matt Arroyo. Actually, my UFC debut, I went into my debut as a four-stripe brown belt, and I was obviously getting close. And I went there and dominated the guy on the ground, submitted him, and he actually gave me my black belt at my UFC debut in 2019. So it was a really special moment. And Matt's just been one of my guys pretty much my whole career. He's cornered me in every single fight, and we're always in this together.
That's badass, bro. Where'd you meet Matt at? New York or Tampa?
Actually, Tampa. So we're both actually from. I'm from Western New York. He's from upstate New York,
Yeah.
and my sister was living in Tampa when I was living in Buffalo. And long story short, I basically got my associate's degree and didn't know what I wanted to do, but I knew I wanted to get out of my small town. It just seemed like a lot of people were doing the same stuff, and so I
How old were
started.
you?
What's up?
How old were you?
I was 21, so this was like
Okay.
14 years ago, 13,
Yeah.
14 years ago. And so I was 21, got my associate's degree, knew I wanted to do some kind of business, but then I also really loved MMA. So I moved down to Tampa. I heard about Matt Arroyo, and it was lucky. My sister actually, they went to the same college. So I kind of knew about them already. And my first day, I come into Gracie, Tampa South, hit it off with everyone. Everyone was mad cool. Got some good work and actually met Matt Fervola the first week. We actually moved to Tampa together the same time, just randomly. And
Bro.
yeah, it was crazy. So, and then we became like super close. We're obviously really close friends now. He's gonna be in my corner for this next fight. And then I also went to USF, University of South Florida, and just got like the total opposite. I got like the worst vibes. It was like they're like you're late, you're a lot of your classes aren't gonna transfer, you're not a resident, so like it's gonna be way more expensive. And I was like, you know what? I'll take a year to get my residency. And if this MMA thing isn't working out, I'm gonna go to college. And then my first year, I won my first four fights, just was smoking people, and I haven't looked back yet since.
Bro, what are the nerves like when you had to leave from New York to Florida? Because when I first started, I'm 26 right now, and when I started, I was 22. And
Okay.
bro, when I went into I was Main Street Boxing down here in downtown where Derek Lewis and them train at, I was
Okay.
like, I guess that's where I'm gonna go start. Billy,
Yeah.
I got fucked up for like five
Course.
months straight, bro. Got my ass beat. And dude, I remember going down there, like the nerve. I remember sitting in the parking lot being like, I'm about to leave this shit. Fuck this.
Yeah.
How did you go, bro, from New York at 21 to Florida and then just be like, man, this is what I'm gonna do, bro. This is it for me. Like, how do you do that?
Yeah, man. It like I said, I was hanging out with a lot of the wrong people, a lot of people that were partying, doing drugs, and like there's like that expression, like you don't want to be the last one at the party. Like you don't want to be the last one who's like, being 25 and I'm going to the party still. So it was a case of a lot of like my smarter friends went off to college, they went to go chase their dreams, and it left me with a lot of the guys that were just doing the same stuff we were doing in high school. So I was like, listen, I just, weighed my odds, and I just didn't think that they didn't have a big MMA gym there. They didn't have a lot going on. So I just said, you know what? I'm going to give this everything I got. When I drove down there, I drove down with my girlfriend at the time. And I was like, you know what? I'm just going to make it happen. She ended up driving back like a week later. The plan was she kind of drove down with me.
Yeah.
And then there was a lot of lonely nights and a lot of like, man, I hope this works out. But I got really lucky. I became friends with a lot of really cool people, and this is my home now forever. And I'm probably not going to move ever again. I don't think.
Dude, that's fucking crazy. Do you know how wild that is? Bro, I couldn't imagine being in another city. You go down there with your girl. Were your parents, how were your parents feeling about it when you leave? Were they
Well,
with you?
they were hoping I went to college. So they I was like, I'm kind of figuring it out, but like, I'm like, I'm doing a little bit of, I'm gonna get a job first. And they were always cool. They were always cool. Like as long as I was working, they were cool. So I got a job right away. And
What
over
was
time,
it?
the first job I had, it was funny. It was actually, again, I was 21 with no skill, no skill set. So
Yeah.
I was just applying all over, and I ended up getting, it was a cooking job at a really nice golf course, and it was like by the pool. So like a bunch of like these rich golfers and these rich families would be country club members, and then I
Yeah.
was the one, like cooking food at like this little villa by the pool. So like it was definitely motivational because there was a lot of like rich people, and they're
Yeah.
tipping me, $50, $100, whatever.
Oh,
And
damn.
they're driving their really nice cars, and it was definitely inspiring. And then ironically, so that golf course is actually like a mile away from the gym that I own now in like this little town called Carrollwood. So like everything happens for a reason, and I think that's God's way of showing me like the irony of the whole thing.
Bro, life's so fucking crazy, bro. What are the fucking odds of that? And then could you even cook before you even went down there to get that job? Or was this like your first cooking job?
Oh, definitely my first. It was. I worked in kitchens before,
Yeah.
but it wasn't that hard. It was like making burgers and making
Oh,
plates and
okay.
like charcuterie and all that kind of stuff. So it was pretty basic, and it was a super low paying job, and that also motivated me. I'm like, I better get my ass in the gym because this
Yeah.
ain't this ain't a career.
So were you training still while you were cooking at the golf course?
Oh yeah, that's something that I've always done even before I moved. Like when I started training, I always gave I gave as much effort as I had to be a
Yeah.
good employee. But then I would always like when I would punch out, I would always go right to the gym and I would probably train twice as hard. And if I was ever gonna miss something, it wasn't gonna be a training session. It was gonna be, if I had to miss something, it was gonna be something else. But I always made sure I trained.
Yeah. What were your hours over there? Was it like 40 hours a week? Was it early mornings, late nights?
No, no, no. It was during the day. It was part time, so it was like I think it was like 3 or 4 days a week,
Yeah.
and then I ended up getting another like serving jobs and a job at a law office. But again,
Mm.
I always made time to train, and it was actually I look back on it, I was busier then, because I had to work for other people than I am now. Like there'd be days I would just work all day, and
Mm.
I'd go to one job, work that all day, like on the weekends, I would work a job all day, work a second job. Like my rest day was I was just making just enough money to skate by.
God damn, Billy. So you were in fucking just grind mode, bro.
Yep. And that's how I
How
got here.
how old were you when you took your first fight?
So I was 21. I took my first fight in Buffalo. I actually lost a split decision to a guy who was 4-0. I was
Ooh.
0-0. I shouldn't even have been in there with him,
Yeah, that's
but
crazy.
the opportunity happened where we were training at this gym, WNY MMA, who I'm still really close with all those guys. They're all super cool. And anyone from Buffalo, man, those are my people.
Yeah.
But basically what happened was I started training with all the fighters and I knew I just loved the sport. I loved the UFC. And one of these guys who was fighting got hurt. And it was a guy that like I did pretty well with anyway. Like I was doing pretty well against him. And they were like, do you want to take his opponent? And I'm like, yo, I don't think I don't think I'm ready, but like, and in my head, I'm like, I don't know if I'm ever gonna have an opportunity like this again. You know what
Jeez.
I mean? And
Yeah,
like,
bro.
yeah, and like looking back, I was like, you had plenty of opportunities like that. So it worked out. I lost a split decision. But it was a super close fight. The one judge actually had me winning all 3 rounds. And the other two had me 29-28. So that it still motivates me to this day. I'm like, man, I thought I won that fight, but it helped me get to where I'm at.
How long was the notice before you had to go? What was the weight class at?
Oh, so it was at 155. And at the time, I read, and this is actually a big part of me coming up, I read Forrest Griffin's book because I was such a big fan of Forrest Griffin after The Ultimate Fighter. I read his book and he talked about how like cutting weight works and all this stuff works. So I think I had like 3 weeks notice and I basically just like starved myself. But luckily, I was just like a chubby 155er. And
What were you walking around at?
I was probably walking around like 165.
Oh, okay, okay.
But I didn't know anything about cutting weight. So like
Yeah.
literally like just stopped eating. I would only eat
Yeah.
like a little bit of fruit during the day. And I was like, oh man, I hope I could do this the right way. But
Yeah.
I made the weight, and I actually had to weigh in naked in front of everyone. I remember the guy was like, he's like, so you want to be a fighter, huh? Like did the old like Ultimate Fighter. I was like, yeah, dude. I'm like, this is nothing. Like I'll do this, a
Yeah.
million times if I have to.
So you do that, right? And then you dip after that. How long from when you have that fight to you go down to Florida?
So it was probably like maybe like 3 or 4 months. I actually
Oh,
already knew
damn.
I already knew I was moving to Tampa at the time.
Yeah.
Um, so I took that fight, and I already knew I was moving to Tampa. So I moved to Tampa, and then right away, I'm like, hey guys, I've been training for like 6 months. I want to take another fight, yada yada yada. And at the time, they're like, you're not ready to fight yet. You know what I mean? You've only been
Yeah.
training for a little while. And I started training at GTS for like a couple of weeks, and then
Yeah.
I ended up booking my own fight. And my coach Matt Arroyo was like, he's like, "Oh, so you're gonna take a fight now?" I'm like, "Yeah, I'm gonna do it." I'm like, like you can come with me if you want. It's back in Western New York. And I was really surprised. He's like, "Oh, hell yeah!" He's like, "I'll go up there with you." And I was like, "No way!" So it was like one of the first times we actually got to hang out. He actually
Yeah.
flew up to Buffalo with me. And I was supposed to fight a really good kickboxer, and it would have been a really tough fight.
Yeah.
And luckily that guy pulled out, and they gave me like just a short notice replacement. And I ended up knocking him out in like 45 seconds. I ended up
Oh,
taking him
dude.
down. I took his back and just, grounded pounded him. And like, I actually knocked him out, and I stopped punching him. And I like looked at him and I'm like, this guy's like dead. And I look up at the ref and I'm like, this guy's like, not moving. And like, they're like, oh, then they like stopped the fight. So it was an interesting way to start off my career.
Bro, don't you just miss those amateur days, bro? I'm in them right now, man, but don't you just miss them days, bro?
Yeah. Yeah. They're good memories. But I wouldn't trade what I have now for them.
No. Fuck no, bro. So this is a question I want to know too, bro. How active were you in your amateur career days, bro? Because as like since you got into the UFC since 2019, dude, you've been active as fuck. Like I feel
Yeah.
like
I,
you're
I
always
try.
fighting.
Yeah, I try to, and I look at it like, I feel like I was like late to the party getting to the UFC because it took me a really long time to develop my skills. I was on the Ultimate Fighter in 2015,
What a
so
season too. McGregor versus
yeah,
Faber. What a
yeah,
fucking
it was
season.
yeah, it was wild. And so I was super active. I fought one year, I fought 5 times, one year I fought 4 times. And then I went when I moved after I moved to Tampa, I went 9-1 as an amateur. And then I made my pro
Damn.
debut. And I always try to stay super busy because I knew that I was already getting older. I started training, like really training when I was 21.
Yeah.
So I knew I was late to the party, and then I got in the UFC when I was 30. So now I'm just training as much as I can. I know I got a handful of fights left, so I'm just trying to make as many highlight reels, knockouts, get as high up in the rankings, fight for a belt one day. But I know my time is now.
Have you were you fighting your whole amateur career at 155?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I took all my amateur fights were at 155. I actually took one fight at 170 just because I knew who the guy was, and
Oh, okay.
one of my teammates already beat him, and I'm like, dude, I'll fight this guy at any weight class. So I fought one guy at 170. I want to say there might have been one fight at 162, and then like 160,
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah.
and then my pro debut was 150. I think my first 2 fights were 150, and then I took another short notice fight against a really good wrestler, and he beat me. And that was at a catch weight at like 160 or 165,
Yeah.
and I'm like, never again. Like we're going to 45, and
Uh-huh.
then I started really getting serious. After my first couple fights.
I bet your weight cut to 45 isn't really that bad now that you know what you're doing. If you're walking around like 65, Billy, that's probably nothing, bro.
Yeah, it's not fun.
Yeah,
It's
no, no,
not.
no, yeah. Let me shut the fuck up. I'm acting like you're
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
fucking 10
Well,
pounds. It
no,
still
but
sucks.
you're right. You're right. I think there's like you look at like the law of diminishing returns. There's some guys that, there's been several fights where the guy starts off, he's way bigger than me. Like in the fight, he's way bigger than me. But by the second round and the third round, he starts getting gassed out because he cut too
Hmm.
much weight. So I try to walk around at like a good healthy weight where I can comfortably cut the weight, but I still have a good amount of size, but I also don't want to get gassed out in the second round because a lot of people do.
How old were you when you were the champ at 155? Was it King of the Cage? You were the champ?
Yeah, I was. I won two belts. I won one for strike off when I knocked out Kama Worthy. I think that was in like 2015.
That's
So I was
crazy.
probably like 24, 24 or 25. And then I was on the Ultimate Fighter. That didn't go great. And then I came back and fought for the CFFC belt, and I think I was like 27 then. So
Dude,
I won a couple amateur belts, won a couple pro fights, or won a couple pro belts. But obviously nothing compares to the UFC.
dude, that's crazy. So you were 26 when you got into the Ultimate Fighter?
Yeah.
How did you get on that show? How did it even work out? Because what was your record at the time when they called you?
So I was 6-1.
Uh-huh.
But so what happened was it actually worked out really good. I knocked out Kama Worthy, who eventually got in the UFC.
Yeah.
We had a crazy fight. We were tagging each other up, and I ended up knocking him out with like a crazy right hand. And that was right before, it was probably like 3 or 4 months before the Ultimate Fighter tryouts. So I go to the Ultimate Fighter tryouts, and at the time, my coach Matt Arroyo had already been on the Ultimate Fighter. So I
Hmm.
kind of knew, like, he kind of gave me the gist of it. And so they do mitt work, and then they do a little bit of grappling, and they eliminate a lot of people right from there.
Oh, damn.
Yeah, yeah. Some people just show up, some people throw up with like a 1-5 record, and they're like, oh, they're like, thanks for showing up, but like they're like, they already had people kind of slated.
Yeah.
So after like the mitt work and the grappling, they do an interview with all the producers. And for this, my head coach, Matt Arroyo, was like, listen, they're not looking for the best fighter. They're looking for a personality. So he made me drink alcohol right before that. So like I get done with all the other stuff. He gives me we already had this plan. So he had a bottle of vodka, and it literally he put it in my Gatorade bottle. So I had like half Gatorade, half vodka. So it's like a strong drink. And they're like, you're gonna go up there soon. He's like, get a nice buzz going. He's like, you want to be like wild in there. So I'm drinking it. I'm drinking it. I can tell I'm getting messed up here. Like I'm like
I'm buzzing. I'm
yeah,
buzzing.
yeah. And so then I go in the interview, and I sit down, and there's a bunch of like these big shots, and
Yeah.
I'm like yelling, and so I'm like, what's up, guys? I'm your new ultimate fighter. Like I'm gonna crush it. And it worked out perfectly because before I walked in there, Kama Worthy, who I just knocked out,
Yeah.
he already did the interview with them. So like they're like, oh, Kama, like you have a good record. I think he was 7-2 at the time.
Yeah.
You have a good record, but you just lost to this guy Billy Q. Like, what was that about? And I'm sure he's like, whatever. So then when I come in there, they're like, oh, Billy, we heard about you, and I'm like, what'd you hear about me? Like I'm I'm half in the bag. And they're like, "Oh, well, we met one of your buddies, Kama Worthy." And I like no joke, I start standing up. I'm like, "Is Kama Worthy here?"
Ready to scrap?
I'm like, "Do I got to knock out Kama Worthy again to get on the show?" And they loved it. They were dying laughing. They're like, "Oh my God, like this guy." And long story short, it ended up working out for me, and like that helped, and I did some other things that really helped. But that was kind of the process. And then next thing you know, I'm on the show, and I don't know if I was ready for it because I was, at that time I was only training for like 5 years.
Yeah.
Um, but I learned so much from that experience, and I brought all that. And then the next chance I got in the UFC, I had a huge chip on my shoulder, so that it carried me right into my UFC career.
Did they tell you Connor and Uriah were gonna be the coaches, or did you know at that moment?
No, they didn't tell us, but I had a feeling they were using McGregor because there was a lot of Europeans there. So I knew it was going to
Oh,
be like I had a feeling they had already done like America versus Europe at one point, like an earlier season.
yeah.
So I had a feeling that it was going to be America versus Europe.
Damn. Well, what were the Europeans like there? Were they even talking to y'all, or was it kind of everyone's kind of chill?
Yeah, they were all pretty cool. There a couple of them, kind of rubbed me the wrong way, but it's a competition. Some of them, like Artem Lobov, who was good friends with Connor.
Yeah.
Me and him actually hit it off really well. He was really cool. We were all wondering how he was there because he had like a 500 record, and we didn't realize like they're just bringing McGregor's boy in, but he ended up was a really good fighter. Like he ended up knocking out a few of our guys.
Yeah.
Um, so for the most part, they were really cool. And overall, by the time the show was over, I was ready to get out of there because just living with that many dudes, it's a lot.
Bro, because how long is it? 6 weeks?
Yeah, it was 6 weeks plus we were there for a week. We were there for like a week before the first fight. And I won that first fight, and then it was 6 full weeks in the house.
Dude, the house was fucking crazy too. Y'all had some wild shit popping in the house, dude.
Yeah.
I remember when Julian and Rosa got in that. Was it Julian and Rosa got in that fight? Was it something on y'all's team too?
Yeah. What happened with that? That him and Chris Grits got into a little bit. They were like throwing stuff
Yes.
at each other, and yeah, there was a few scuffles because you got to remember, how the show works. Like, um, you know, week one, no one's drinking, no one's doing anything because we all have fights coming up. But as the show goes on, like one guy gets eliminated, then another guy gets eliminated, another guy, and then halfway through the show, most of the people are eliminated. So there, you can order whatever you want. So you could be like, I want a steak and a 12 pack tonight, or I want a steak and a bottle. I want a bottle of liquor, and they love it because the more you drink, the more outgoing you're going to be.
Oh,
So
dude.
it would turn into like we'd have these card games where like if you lost a hand, you'd have to take a shot, and next thing you know, everyone's drinking, and it was already stressful. So it was just a wild experience.
Bro, that's so fucking crazy too, man. Because there's no phone. Y'all can't even listen to the music. There's no fucking TV. There's nothing. So you're
Yeah,
just drunk around a bunch of other Europeans who are probably going hard, especially if they already been eliminated, which
yeah,
always is crazy to me, bro. I always figured like if they lose, they should just go home. Because if you're
yeah,
just there, I get it though, because someone gets injured. But
yeah,
bro, they're just getting toasted, especially if you lose the first fight of the season. You got to sit
yeah.
for 6 weeks, bro.
Yeah, I know when I lost I think like the second or third week. So we still had like 3 weeks to go. I was definitely like thinking, I'm like, man, I should just go home. Like this sucks. Like, what am I doing here? Because not only, like what you said, if someone gets injured, but we actually had I forgot how it worked, but like they brought Artem Lobov back, and
Yeah.
then they brought one of our guys back. So like we already had an extra guy, so they
Mhm.
were planning on eliminating someone who won. But then someone got hurt, so it worked out. But I knew I wasn't going to get back in the show. But it was just a really good experience. I trained for 4 hours every single day with Team Alpha Male, and just being in that
Badass.
habit. Like I know when I got home, like I didn't want to train for like a week. I was like this was a rough time. Like my body took it. But after that experience, it like opened it, it opened up a lot of doors for me, and I kind of understood what I had to do to get to this level.
Have you been at 145 ever since then?
Yeah, that show was at 155, which made it easier to cut weight.
Yeah.
I was definitely an undersized fighter, but I realized that I'm like, dude, you're a 45er. Like these 55ers are just too big.
Another thing too, I want to talk about in the show, and I'll go over it. What were you thinking when Cody and Connor got into it right there, bro? What was going through your mind when all that happened?
Oh yeah, that was pretty tense. Like they didn't illustrate how tense it was for all of us because these guys are just chirping at each other, and it at that point when Cody ended up standing up, it already had like he was already talking like Connor was already saying a lot of like bad stuff about TJ or whatever. So it was pretty tense. And then when that happened, I was like, oh man, like are we about to get in like a brawl right now? And I actually just fought like 2 days before. So like I still have like a black eye and I'm like, oh my God, I'm like, we're about to get in like I'm about to get punched by like some random European guy. But luckily it broke pretty quick and cooler heads prevailed. But it was a cool moment.
So after that show, bro, you go home and relax. How long from that show did they call you back up for Dana White Contender Series?
Oh man, it was years. So they
Oh,
actually
damn.
sent me after the Ultimate Fighter. I was hoping, like, like a lot of times they'll just call you back for like one fight. They're like, all right, you got one UFC fight to prove yourself. They didn't send it to me. They actually sent me $500 and I still have that letter. And they're pretty much like, your services are no longer needed. And obviously that was heartbreaking. And then I went on. So I knew I wasn't gonna get invited to the UFC yet. I knew I had to win. They were basically like, win a couple fights and we'll get you back.
Yeah.
So I ended up fighting a guy named Mark Stevens, who was also on the Ultimate Fighter years before that.
Yeah.
Did really well against him, dominated him, sent him to the hospital. It was just a wild fight. Then my next fight, I fought Mitchell Keonis. He was 7-1. I was 7-1. And he ended up knocking me out. It was the first time I ever got knocked out in a fight. So then I was really set back. I was like, oh man,
Yeah.
I'm never like I was heartbroken then for sure. Um, but then I just picked myself back up and I was like, you know what? You put so much work in. He got signed to the UFC right off that fight. I'm like, dude, you're so close. And that's when I went on a tear. I went on like I think like a 4 or 5 fight winning streak where I was just knocking people out, submitting people, knocking people out, making guys quit and like not coming back. And then off of that winning streak, I think it was like, but I had all kinds of like I had a broken hand, I had a torn ACL, I had a lot of injuries. But I just stuck to the plan. And then it was probably I think it was 2000, yeah, it was 2019. So it went from 2015 to 2019. It was like
Shit, so
basically
4 years.
a 4 year run until they called me back. And I was on, like I said, like a 4 or 5 fight. I think I won 5 fights in a row.
Yeah,
And then I got in the contender series, and I'm like, I'm not letting this one slip away.
nah.
And won that fight, and then won my next 3 UFC fights. So went on a hell of a run, and that's what I'm trying to get right back to now. Get back on a winning streak.
Have you always had really good cardio, bro? Because the first fight I saw you fight in the UFC was Spike Carlisle. And I was
Uh
like, this dude gets the fuck down, son. So Billy Q
huh.
ain't here to fuck around, dog.
Yeah, I didn't always have like really good cardio. But it over time, just doing rounds after rounds after rounds, and doing sprints. I do sprints every single Saturday. I haven't missed one in a very long time. But a lot of it just comes from like when we would do like jujitsu rounds or sparring rounds. I would always stay in, and I would never take like rest rounds. Or like a lot of guys like, all right, I did 4 rounds. I'm gonna take 1 round off, and then I'll do a couple more. For me, I would rather do 5 rounds in a row than like 3 rounds and then 3 more rounds and then 3 more rounds with a break.
Yeah.
So I'm basically conditioning my body where it's like you don't get a break until the fight's over. And I think a lot of that has helped with my conditioning. And especially if I'm a volume fighter, I try to pressure you the whole time. If I can pressure you a lot early on in the fight, I'm usually going to take over in the second and third round.
No, that's true, bro. Because another fight you showed that too, bro. Which, dude, I felt so bad for y'all because you had to fight right after Justin Gaethje and Michael Chandler.
Oh yeah, yeah,
Probably one of the greatest fights, bro. Like top 5 fights we've fucking war. And then
yeah,
I was sitting with my homies. They came over for the fights. You and Shane were coming out next, and I was
yeah,
like, boys, we just witnessed some fucking gladiators go to war. We're about to witness someone die in this fight. This is about to be
yeah,
fucking crazy. And dude,
yeah.
y'all 3 rounds fucking war, bro. Banging, like you were just saying, bro, putting it on him. Like that's what made me think, like, how the fuck does he have this cardio? Because bro, you've been in so many wars and so many fights. That's why I was wondering that.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, that was definitely motivational, and they actually switched the card. So it was supposed to be us to
Yep.
start off the main card and then them after. And they switched us, and I was like at first I'm like, oh, it's cool, I'm fighting after them. And then they start rocking each other, and Gagey rocks him right away. And I'm like, oh yeah, like I was hoping, like I love Michael Chandler. I love both guys, but I'm like, man,
Same.
a quick finish would be great here. And they start going to war. And I'll never forget this. I was in the Knicks locker room, like warming up, and I could feel like the crowd above me, and it's like moving, like shaking, and I'm like, oh my god, I'm like, and then I literally like towards the end of it, I'm like, how are we gonna top this? Like, and I'm like, you know what? I'm like, I'll give it everything I got. You know what I mean? I'm like, and I knew I had a tough opponent in front of me. But I remember feeling that in the Knicks locker room. I'm like, Jesus Christ, like this is like, people aren't gonna recover from this. And luckily they did, but it took a little while.
Bro, because I bet that was crazy for you too, bro, because it was at MSG, giant card. It was Usman versus Covington too. Fucking tons of people are there. Bro, what was it like being in the Knicks locker room, bro? That's like me being at Toyota Center in the fucking Rockets locker room. Like, what was
Yeah,
that like for you, bro? That's badass, especially because you're
yeah.
from there, growing up there.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It was just one of those like massive bucket list things. And I just kept telling myself, like when we booked the fight and we got that, I just kept telling myself, like, this is the same cage you fight in, you spar in every single day. Like, don't make it bigger than it has to be. So the whole time I'm kind of just like, kind of, it's no big deal, no big deal. But then like I'm warming up with like Alex Pereira and Li Quinta and Aljamain and like all those guys, and I'm like, all right, this is pretty cool. Like Glover Teixeira, like, I definitely enjoyed it, and even looking back, it's definitely my favorite. Like, it's one of my favorite fights, and definitely my favorite fight that I didn't win. And you know what, like me and Shane Burgos are cool after. Like we'll DM each other every now and then. He's a father of 3 girls. Now I'm a father of one boy, and I got one on the way. So it's just, at the end of the day, like there's a lot of mutual respect for each other.
Nah, bro, you could tell, bro. That was just two warriors going out there, bro, to put on a show, bro. Another thing I want to know too, Billy, before I get you out of here, man. what is your favorite walkout song that you have had over all the years? And what was the favorite, like your favorite moment to walk out at?
Huh, that's a good question. I have a couple of them actually, and you know what? It's funny you mentioned that. I've never been asked that before. My last fight in UFC Nashville, how it like kind of got set up was, I wanted to do some kind of like country because I like country music, and it was in Nashville, so I'm like, I want to come out to a banger.
Yeah.
So I looked at some of the songs, and it's in Tennessee. Like Tennessee whiskey and stuff
Yeah.
like those songs, but like a lot of them are slower. So I was like, all right, I don't want to come out to a slow song. I want to come out to like, boom, like let's go, let's go, let's go. So I came out to Jelly Roll, Son of the South, or was it Son of the Dirty South?
Yes,
And
sir.
it worked out so good because Damon Jackson comes out before me, and he comes out to Tennessee Whiskey, which is a good song, but it's just super slow, and
Yeah.
it's not the right environment for that. So he walks like he's like, "You're as smooth as Tennessee Whiskey," and it's like
Yeah.
super slow, and like I'm bored in the back. I'm like, wait until they hear my song. My song comes up, and he's like, "It's that other," and it's like, well, and like I've never done this before, but I was like amped up. I'm like high fiving people. I'm like, let's go. Like I'm like, and then I actually like I had to calm myself down when I got up there because I'm like, all right, settle down. You still got to fight, but
Yeah.
I'm like just how it worked out. And I don't know what it was, but it was a huge like pro Billy Q card, or it was a pro Billy Q crowd.
Yeah.
And, like, even though like Billy Quarantillo and the crowd like, like, oh my god, there's nothing like it. So that was definitely up there. There's a couple. The MSG one was a fun one too. There's some other ones, but that was the only one where I'm like, I was kind of like out of character because I always try to stay composed. But like when that music started, and like everyone, like the whole crowd, like the whole energy just like went from like 0 to 100. So that one will always be special to me.
That's badass, Billy. I want to know too, bro. What's going through your mind when they're like, are you trying to calm down a little bit more when they're putting the Vaseline on you? Like, what's going through your head right there, bro? Like in that moment before you step in.
Yeah, that's exactly it. I just try to stay relaxed because I don't want to. I've seen guys do this before where they get all amped up, and next thing you know, like they come out guns blazing and they get tired within the first minute. So I just try to stay relaxed, stay cool. Understand like this is the same cage that we spar in every single weekend. And try to just think of my fundamental stuff. My fundamentals can win fights, hands up, chin down, touch him, work on the combos that I've been working, work on the game plan that I've been working. And for the most part, it works out really well.
Bro, Billy, you're the fucking man. Let's just go ahead and say that out there. You're the fucking man, bro. I appreciate the time that I was able to have with you today, brother. I'm gonna let you get out of here. I know you're busy as shit. And you got a lot going on, dude. But I just want to give you a huge shout out, Billy, for real. You're the man, bro. It's been so badass watching you over your career, bro, and just the badass fights you've been in and the legends you've had to fight against, bro. You've been in the UFC now for only like 3 to 4 years. You've had 10 fights, only lost 3 of them against bad motherfuckers. So you're a G, bro. And if there's anything you want to say before I get you out of here, Billy, before you go, I appreciate you, my man.
No, man, I appreciate you, man. Just check out my fight March 23rd at the Apex. I'm gonna burn that Apex down. It's gonna be sick.
It's gonna be badass, guys. Y'all check it out. Billy Q. Shout
Thank
out
you,
the man
man.
right here, folks.
Have a good one, brother.